Go ahead and begin. So hi everyone, I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Before we begin, we do want to ask all of our participants to please keep their mics muted just to avoid any disruptions we have during the session. If you have a question, please either utilize the chat or use the raise hand feature. I'll be helping our presenter monitor that. So our presenter today is Corey Lee. Mr. Lee graduated from UC Davis in 2011 with a degree in biotechnology. He completed his UC Davis teaching credential and MA program, having previously been part of the CalTeach program at UC Davis. He's a student teaching at Vacaville High, and this fall he began his 9th year there teaching. There he teaches AP Chemistry and Biotechnology, but today he's here to share some of tips and how to really understand the power and the capacities of Zoom in a virtual classroom. But with that being said, I want to hand it over to our presenter and we can begin whenever he's ready.
All right. Hi, everyone. Like Jessica said, I'm Corey Lee. I live in Vacaville and I teach at Vacaville High School. It's a fantastic public high school, about 2,000 students. If you're not familiar with Vacaville, we're about 30-ish minutes out of Sacramento towards San Francisco, kind of right smack dab in the middle. So today I want to talk to you guys about Zoom and how to best utilize Zoom if you're considering it or if you're currently using it. Hopefully I can provide you some tricks and everything. Oh, hi. And so I hope that you can get some information, and I'm happy to answer questions and everything as we go through it. I would say probably the easiest way is throw them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand and you have a specific question on a specific slide, then we can do that. And of course, I'm happy to answer questions at the end as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into this and get started. So I didn't realize Jessica was going to introduce me, and so I made an introduction slide. But anyway, I'm a science teacher at Vacaville High School. This is my 9th year teaching at Vaca High. I have credentials in chemistry and biology and an MA from UC Davis. I also have a credential in medical science and technology. That's what allows me to teach the biotechnology class at Vaca High. I'm also the technology coordinator there. I'm basically I've got this very strange kind of weird issue and I need some help with it. Who do I go to? Tends to be me. That's what ends up happening there. I'm also the student council activities director this year. This is my first year in that role. I've been involved with student council for a long time now, but this is my first year in charge of it, and I'm super excited, even though this is a very bizarre year to be in charge of anything, but it's okay. And I've been doing tech support since 5th grade. I was in elementary school at just that awkward time when teachers had just started to get computers in their classrooms, but there weren't enough computers in the district to merit having tech support people paid full-time to be there. And so when teachers had issues in their elementary school classes, they would call my classroom, I'd go down, fix their issue, go back to class. And so I've been doing this a long time. I really enjoy it. I also did tech support for UC Davis when I was a student there as well. So, but today we're here to talk about Zoom, right? And all the different things about Zoom. This is kind of my basic agenda in terms of what I'm going to cover. Some things we'll demo, some things I have screenshots of. One thing about Zoom is it's not great to show you guys Zoom using Zoom. That's one of the downsides of it. And so I had to do a lot of screenshots and things like that. And so we'll kind of go through that. But I want to show you polling, breakout rooms, and screen sharing. Those are the 3 big ones in terms of using Zoom. I want to show you the Zoom basics and controls, just a little bit of vocab, what things are called, as well as how to have control over a meeting, because depending on what grade level you have or what kinds of kids you've got or all of that, I mean, it's been an interesting ride to see all of the different experiences that teachers have had using Zoom as their primary classroom. I want to talk about some important settings on Zoom that you need to set on the web if you're going to be using Zoom regularly. Talk about recording your Zoom lectures. You actually have some options for that potentially, and also running reports so that you can see who was in your Zoom, who wasn't, and all that kind of stuff, all right? So this is basically how Zoom looks, and you guys are kind of looking at that right now. And so basically the main screen here, right, in green, highlighted in green there, that's your gallery. So that's the green box there. That's where you can see everyone's pictures or their names or profile pictures, things like that. At the bottom, you have the control bar. The control bar looks much bigger and has more features when you're the host compared to when you are a participant. So you guys probably have a control bar, but it doesn't have all those options like it does in the picture there. And then in addition to that, you have your audio video controls. You guys have been using that to turn your video on and off, or to mute yourself or unmute yourself. You can open the participant list by clicking on the participants button here, and that's what's showing up here in the top right corner. You can click on the chat button, and that'll open the chat window, open here. And you can also end the meeting if you click the big red button that says end. And last but not least, if you were hosting the meeting and needed to share the details, you can actually click that I in the top left corner there, and that would allow you to see all the meeting info, copy the link, things like that. And so that's the kind of basics of the main Zoom screen, right? I think the first and most important control feature is probably the waiting room, which you guys were all in prior to entering this meeting, right? The waiting room prevents unintended people from getting into your meeting. And so what ends up happening is it looks just like this. It ends up being at the top of your participant list. So you do need to have the participant window open in order to see this. As soon as you have more than one person in your meeting, you'll see an admit all button, and you'll be able to just click that, and you'll be able to admit everyone at the same time. You can also message people in the wait room if somebody's got a weird name or something, or you need to talk to somebody without letting them in to disrupt your meeting. You can send them a message, and they'll be able to see that and respond in the waiting room. If a student gets kicked out because they're being completely unruly and they're just completely disrupting your class, when they rejoin the meeting, they will go back into the waiting room so long as you still have that enabled. If you disable the waiting room, then they would come straight into the meeting. So I think that it's important to keep the waiting room on and just to keep monitoring it. If you're in a practice session, can you still see how many people are in the waiting room? Yeah, you'll be able to see it as long as you have the participant window open. So if you have the participant window open, you'll be able to see the list of people in the waiting room. If you don't have it open, then you will see a little highlight bubble next to the participant button, but you won't actually see how many, if that makes sense. And it's important to monitor, right? That if you're going to keep the waiting room on all of your meeting, if you're, in the middle of class, you need to monitor the waiting room, because if a kid, their internet craps out and they disconnect and then they reconnect, well, you want to let them back into the meeting. Otherwise, they're going to miss the rest of class, right? And we'll talk later about how you can enable a chime sound for yourself every time someone joins the meeting so that you can hear it and go, oh, someone's in the waiting room, I need to go check that. But I do think it's important to keep it there. And once you have your kids trained to know that they're not going to be admitted from the waiting room without their proper first and last name, it tends to go pretty smoothly. And so maybe the first couple of times you do this, it might be a little tricky. You might get some kids with the name iPhone or lots of random things, or if they're using their mom or dad's computer, they might have mom and dad's name, something like that. But after you kind of go through this with them a couple of times, the kids pick it up pretty quickly, even the young ones. In the meeting, there are several controls that you have available to you to be able to control participants. They're located at the bottom of the participant list. So you'll see that this is the bottom of the participant list here, and there's a button that says more, right? So if you click on more, these are all the different options that you have available to you. And so you can mute participants upon entry. You can allow participants to unmute themselves. This is all relatively self-explanatory, but I did mention the sound piece, right? When somebody enters or leaves in the waiting room, if you check this box, you'll hear that sound in your computer anytime someone joins or leaves your meeting. And so I think that that's really important if you're in the middle of class and kids are disconnecting or someone joins your class late that day. I think it's important to have that enabled. This next one, to allow participants to rename themselves. If your kids are totally just abusing that, just disable it. Then they're stuck with whatever name they came in with. And then if you lock the meeting, that means that nobody can come into it. They can't even get into the waiting room at that point. So you can see that. And then you can see enable waiting room is grayed out here. That's because for me, my administrator at the district level requires us to have the waiting room on. We actually can't disable it. So it's an always on feature. We don't have a choice. There's a couple of other features that you'll want to know. So this is important for controlling everything that's going on, but there's a couple more. If you hover over a participant's name in the participant list, a more button will appear, and these are the options that you'll have as a host when you're looking at all these different participants. And so if you want to make someone a co-host, or if you want to rename somebody because their name is inappropriate, or if they're being obnoxious with their video, they're trying to show, their dog or cat on the screen, and you're trying to just teach, you can stop their video. Or maybe they're doing something cool and you want to show everybody, you can actually spotlight their video. That makes it big on everybody else's screen so that they're looking at that person and not anybody else. So there's all that. You can also send people back to the waiting room. So instead of kicking them out, you can just put them in the waiting room and leave them there. So there's all of that. One question that I did get about Zoom and about controlling this was, how can I see more of my students on my screen at one time? That's actually a feature built into Zoom. You can actually see up to 49 participant screens simultaneously. However, there is a limitation, right? So if you go to your settings for Zoom and you go to video settings, you'll find this setting at the very bottom called display up to 49 participants per screen in gallery view. If that option is available and you check it, you'll be able to see them all. If that option is grayed out on your computer, it means that your computer isn't powerful enough to simultaneously show 49 screens at the same time. And unfortunately, there's not any way to fix that other than getting a faster computer. So that's an unfortunate side effect of that, but yeah, that's unfortunately the only way to fix it. So if you encounter this where you're trying to have more people on the screen at once, because our average class sizes, I don't know what you all have. My average class sizes right now are hovering around 34. And so only being able to see 24, 25 kids, that's not going to cut it, because then there's 10, 12 kids on the next screen that I can't see. My student council class is also 50 students. And so there'd be no way for me to be able to see everyone that way. So that's a good way for you to be able to see more people. But again, it's required. It requires a pretty powerful computer for you to be able to do that. Good question. So if you mute someone, can you unmute them too? No, you can request that they unmute, but you can't actually unmute anybody. So basically, if you hover over anybody's picture or profile picture in the gallery view, you'll see a blue button that says ask to unmute. And so I can ask people to unmute themselves, and they have the option of saying, yes, I'll unmute myself, or maybe later. And you'll get notified if they hit maybe later. So you can't directly unmute them, but kind of. All right. The chat function, which you guys are taking full advantage of right now, and so do the kids. There are 3 different options for chat. They're all listed in the bottom right-hand corner when you have the chat window open. If you click those 3 dots there, you'll get these 3 options. Now, there is technically a 4th option. I can't show you that because the 4th option is disabled for my district, but I'll kind of explain that as we go. So the first option is no one. If you turn the option to no one, that means none of the participants can send messages at all, and only I as the host can send messages to the participants. I had to do this today because my kids wanted to start a Among Us game with each other, and they said, oh, what's the join code? And I said, haha, no, and I disabled the chat, so then they couldn't join each other and play Among Us. And so there are definitely functional uses for the chat. That is not one of them, unfortunately. So if you change it to no one, then no one can chat except for you. Host only. This is an option that's pretty great because basically the kids can send messages directly to you, but they cannot send messages to everybody, and they cannot send messages to each other. So basically it's restricted to just chat between you and the student and no one else. So I think that that's a pretty solid option for most teachers. And then there's everyone publicly, right? Participants can publicly send messages to everybody, and they can also send private messages to the host, right? The 4th option, which is not visible in the screenshot because my district has it completely disabled, is private chat. Private chat allows the kids to send private messages between one another where you won't be able to see them until the end of the meeting. All chats are recorded for the host. So even though you can't see it during the meeting, you'll be able to see all of their communication after the meeting has ended. A lot of the kids don't know that, and so they send all kinds of obnoxious and inappropriate messages to each other if the private chat function is enabled. So I would just disable it. If you have the option to enable it, wouldn't even take it. Just stay away from it. If you've disabled attendees to chat with anyone, but you need to communicate with a specific person and have them respond back to you when you enable chat with panelists, will all the attendees be able to see the whole chat history? No. So basically, if you send someone a private message, they're the only ones that will be able to see them. But if you have the option set to no one, they won't be able to respond to you by chatting anyway. They might be able to unmute themselves and talk to you or something like that. But in order for them to respond, you would have to change the chat option to host only. But none of the participants will be able to see chat history unless it's being sent to everyone publicly, basically, or if it's a private message between you and them. So there's that. So that's chat. I definitely recommend disabling private chat. You're welcome. Polls. Polls have been really fun. I've done a lot of polls because they're super easy to make, and the kids enjoy just answering some of them sometimes. So you can make as many polls as you want, and your polls carry over. If you set up a recurring meeting, like your class basically every day, you can make as many polls as you want, and they just roll over meeting to meeting. So here's an example. So basically, it's a great way to get formative feedback. It's super quick, super easy. You see the results in real time. I'm going to show you some screenshots so you understand what that looks like. There is an anonymous option, and I think that you might find that there are times where the kids will be more honest with you if they were answering anonymously, right? And so if you want, that's definitely an option. Most of the kids usually, honestly, are not aware that it's not anonymous. So most of the time they'll answer it honestly because they don't think that you know, but you do. And here's the thing, with polls, there is no function within the Zoom program for you to create, edit, or add questions or remove questions for polls. All of that has to be done on Zoom's website. So if you open it here on the program, you can execute the polls and you can run them, but you can't actually edit them or anything. You actually have to go to Zoom's website to do that. And we'll talk about how that works as well. So this is an example of a poll. I run this poll daily because I have a student whose nickname is Claire 2.0. I'm not going to go into the history of that, but her name is Claire 2.0, and she is consistently tardy to Zoom every single day of the week. And so I put this poll up before class starts for all of my kids to answer, and they try and guess how tardy she will be today. And so this is what the poll looks like when you first pull it up, and these are all the different options that they can pick from. The polls can be set to a single choice, so they can only pick one of these options, or you can actually set it up to be multiple choice, where they can checkbox multiple options as their selection. So the choice is yours in terms of how you want to set those questions up. So once you conduct the poll, once you launch it, right, you're actually able to see the poll results in real time. So you can see here that after 56 seconds, 23 of my 29 students had voted, approximately 79%, and the majority of them are saying that she's going to be 1 minute and 30 seconds tardy today. So you can see that there are some people, look, there's zero confidence she's going to be on time. Look at this, 0%. Not a single person believed that she was going to do it. So you can see this all in real time on your screen. And then you can also share the results of the poll after it is over. You cannot share it while it's live, but once you choose to end the poll, you can then show them these results, and the top option for each question will end up being highlighted in red so that people know. If there are multiple options that got tied, then multiple of them will be red because they're the top options. So let's see here. I got a couple of questions in the chat. On Chromebooks, are certain functions unavailable? Yes, there are definitely some limitations to Chromebooks, but the difficult aspect of answering that question is it depends on which Chromebook you have. Some Chromebooks have the functions enabled because they are powerful enough to do them, and some Chromebooks don't. So I can't give you like a blanket answer of all of these things work on Chromebooks and all of these things don't work on Chromebooks, right? It really is kind of a trial and error thing, unfortunately, because each Chromebook has such different specifications that there's no way to really know or for me to answer that question. So I'm sorry I can't give you more information than that. But yes, there are definitely limitations on Chromebooks, and it depends on what kind of Chromebook you have. Is there a way for polls to be seen on the Zoom browser users? I don't believe so. I believe the polls have to be done on the actual Zoom app. I don't think that they can participate or see the results or anything like that in the browser. It's just significantly more limited than the program is. And so if at all possible, I would definitely recommend the kids use the actual Zoom app or Zoom program instead of the web browser, even if it's on their phone, because their phone even can participate in polls and all of that. So yeah, so that's polls. Any other questions in that? I think you guys are doing okay with that, and this is working quite well. Cool. So I got a lot of questions about breakout rooms, and so I definitely want to address that because that was a big one in terms of tell me more about breakout rooms, tell me how these work, right? And I have to tell you, this is probably the most tedious part of Zoom. This is probably the part where you have to be the most careful because the kids have the most flexibility here. So some pros of breakout rooms. It's a great way for students to collaborate. You know, I teach AP Chem this quarter, and putting my kids in breakout rooms and having them collaborate on a worksheet or a really difficult problem together, it's been great. It's been great for that, right? But you really have to trust your kids, and we're going to talk about why. So it's easy to make study groups. I host review sessions prior to my exams. And so what happens is some of the kids, they can't get together at each other's houses right now. And so they'll come join Zoom, and I'll throw them in a breakout room together. And then when they need help, when you're in a breakout room, you actually have a ask for help button. And I get a notification on my screen saying, Suzanne Pinter is asking for help in breakout room 2. And I can go join their room, answer their questions, and then hop back out and go to some other room. In addition, fostering relationships right now has been incredibly difficult. I mean, I'm sure, any teacher out there agrees that, trying to build relationships in this kind of virtual environment is not at all ideal, and it's not easy at all. But breakout rooms has actually proven to be a relatively nice way to do that. It's a smaller group, it's a more kind of enclosed group, and if they're constantly together in the same group, they tend to get to know each other pretty well and overall tend to, kind of build a relationship with one another. So it's been great for a lot of things. Some cons to breakout rooms. You can't monitor breakout rooms unless you're in the room. That's probably the biggest part of the issue with breakout rooms, is that if you, the teacher, are not in there, there's no way for you to know what happened in that breakout room. And if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 breakout rooms at the same time, you can't be in all of them at the same time. So you really kind of have to rotate through and know that your kids understand what the expectations are, even when you're not in the room. The other issue with breakout rooms is that the restrictions that you set during the meeting, they don't carry over into the breakout rooms. So for example, if I restricted everybody in this meeting right now from unmuting themselves, as soon as I put you into breakout rooms, that's not a limitation anymore. You guys can unmute yourselves. You guys can share screens with each other. You guys could do anything that Zoom has the capability of doing in a breakout room without any kind of control from me. Even if I go into a breakout room, I have limited control over you in that situation. So you really have to kind of set firm guidelines and understanding about what is and isn't allowed in breakout rooms, because it can get out of control pretty quickly here. Let's see, I read that webinar does not support breakout rooms. I don't actually know the answer to that question because we don't have the webinar feature at VACA High anyway. And so I don't have a ton of experience with that. I don't know if breakout rooms work during webinars or not. I'm guessing probably not, but I don't 100% know that. If you have a breakout room with a few students, can you then break out the rest into single breakout rooms to be able to talk to them individually? Yeah, so we're going to talk about how breakout rooms get set up and how you can set it up a little differently and things like that. And I'll tell you what some of my colleagues have done with breakout rooms as well. So we'll definitely get to that. So when you first click the breakout room button, you'll be presented with this window. And essentially, this window is asking you, how many rooms do you want, right? Do you want it to be 10 rooms, 12 rooms, 15 rooms, 2 rooms? How many do you want? And it also will want to know, do you want Zoom to just randomly assign kids into rooms? Or do you want them to be manually assigned? Do you want to have to manually hand pick and put kids into rooms? Now, I'll tell you, at the beginning of the school year, when I didn't know any of the kids yet, and I was just like, I don't know. I'm just gonna automatically assign you guys, and I hope you get along together. Okay, bye-bye, and assign them that way. And now that I've kind of got to know the kids a little bit, I'm like, okay, now I know, like, you know, she can go with her and he can go with him, and you know, I'm a little more strategic about it now. And also, I have breakout rooms pre-assigned now, and we will talk about that momentarily as well. So I see that question. We will get there. How do you hop from breakout room to breakout room? I'll show you that as well. That's in a screenshot that's coming up here. So once you decide how many breakout rooms you want, this is what the window looks like. I didn't have any participants in the Zoom meeting when I was taking these screenshots, and so it's just empty. But if I hit it automatically and then 8 rooms, all of the participants would populate into rooms and it would spread them out evenly. So no room would be like empty and then another room has like 20 kids. And so it would spread them out evenly. You can rename the rooms if you want. You can add or remove rooms. One thing that is important for you to know, once you set the number of breakout rooms and you open the rooms up, you cannot adjust the number of rooms after that. You would have to close all the rooms in order to make an adjustment to the number. So my recommendation would be have the right number of rooms that you're going to need, or have more than enough rooms, because it's always okay to leave a room empty, but you can't always necessarily, you know, add on a room later. So the next piece I want to show you, so basically you have some options here that you can set for breakout rooms, and we want to kind of talk about how that looks. And so if you click that options button, these are the different options that you have available to you in breakout rooms. And so you can, the first one here, move all participants into breakout rooms automatically, meaning that when you hit open rooms, everyone goes into a breakout room right away. Here's what I discovered. If kids are on Chromebooks, they will not get moved in automatically. It will still ask them, hey, do you want to go to this breakout room? And basically they can click yes, or they can click later. And then it just keeps prompting them to try and join the breakout room. So just be aware that that function doesn't work on Chromebooks. And so if you have a kid just sitting there, it's because they're not clicking on join on their screen. The second option, allow participants to return to the main session at any time. Normally I have that option disabled. It keeps them in the breakout rooms, and then I can go into their breakout rooms and jump between them as they need help, but I don't want them coming back and forth into the main room when I'm in a different breakout room, right? It's a supervision kind of thing. You can check this box, the third box here, if you want breakout rooms to close automatically, if you don't want to have to worry about keeping time for yourself. You know, you look and, oh, there's 10 minutes left in the period, so I want these to close after 10 minutes. Then you can set that option. And then at the last option there, once you hit the close breakout room button, basically there will be a countdown and the kids will be notified of the countdown, and you can set however long that you want with that, right? If you click the recreate button instead, essentially what that allows you to do is it allows you to do just that. It allows you to recreate the breakout rooms. It'll reshuffle the kids for you, or you can manually do it. You can change the number of rooms, all of that. So that's what the recreate button does. But let's talk about pre-assigning breakout rooms, because I saw several questions about that and doing all of that. So first of all, this is an option that our administrators have enabled for us on Zoom, and it's something that I would recommend that you do as well. Essentially, when you're setting up your meeting, this is an option that you can check in the settings on Zoom's website. What this setting requires people to do is they cannot join my meeting unless they are logged into Zoom and they are logged in with an email address that ends in one of these email addresses, right? Most districts by now, I think, have you know, student-wide email accounts basically that have been made. And so our district, all of our email addresses end in @vacavilleusd.org. So essentially, it helps us cut down on the Zoom bombing, which you may have heard a lot about. Basically, you know, kids getting access to links that they shouldn't have access to, and they join someone's meeting and they try and go in and disrupt the meeting as much as they possibly can, and then they leave. This significantly cut down on that. We went from, there were some teachers that were getting Zoom bombed every day, and they're not getting Zoom bombed at all now because your email address is going to be registered, so it's going to be real easy to identify the troublemaking kids. The other reason why I would tell you to enable this option is because by enabling this option, it will make pre-assigning breakout rooms easier for you, right? If the kids are for sure signed into a Zoom account before they join your meeting, you'll be able to better assign them to breakout rooms. So here's how that goes. You can see here that I've done some pre-assignments for breakout rooms. And so this is what that looks like. Essentially, I can add or remove as many rooms as I want. I've redacted email addresses here for privacy. But basically, you just need to add the rooms that you want, however many rooms that you want to create. And then you just have to put in each student's email address that they log into Zoom with in whichever room they're supposed to be in. There are a couple limitations to this. One, you have to use their email address. You cannot use their name or anything else. And so that's kind of a bummer, especially when it's just like ours are S dash and then a number. And like, I don't know who is who. Even on this list, I have no idea who is who. And I would have to log into Aries to figure it out. So that's kind of a bummer. And two, sometimes these get erased and I don't really know why or understand why that happens, but sometimes I've set them and then I go in the next day and they're gone. So I have just gotten to the point where I've saved a file on my computer called a CSV file, and that is what I use now for all of my breakout rooms. Yes, this is on zoom.us. It is under, when you are creating a meeting, it is one of the options at the very bottom. And we'll talk about CSVs later. Like, I don't have a screenshot of one of those made, but definitely remind me, and I'm happy to go back to talk about how to set up a CSV later. But essentially, if you want to make these breakout rooms ahead of time in a CSV file, the first column has the name of the room. The second column has the email address that goes in that room. So essentially, you would have room one, room one, room one, room one, and then the 4 email addresses of the 4 kids you want to be in that room. And then room 2, room 2, room 2, room 2, and then the 4 kids' email addresses that you want in room 2. That's essentially how the CSV file is. It's not super complicated. There's also a template on Zoom's website if you're curious about that. So once I have those breakout rooms pre-assigned in Zoom on their website, when I'm in my meeting now and I have the kids in the meeting, this is what it ends up looking like, right? The kids are already populated into their different breakout rooms that were pre-assigned from the list that I have on Zoom's website. So when I open up the breakout rooms tab, this immediately shows up and I can just hit open all rooms, send the kids off and say, see you later, hit the ask for help button if you need something, right? And so it definitely saves a lot of time. I'm not sitting there trying to figure out, okay, you know, who's gonna be in this room today? Okay, you know, or even automatically, it would definitely be good. Good question. So if you have a guest lecturer or someone to help with breakout rooms, can they get to your class without a Vacaville USD email? So what they have done is the average teacher, no. Basically, if you're going to have guest speakers, you have to let the district know ahead of time so they can change that setting on your account so that you can allow guest speakers with different email addresses to join your meeting. But it was a little bit more logistically to make that work, but the payoff of not having Zoom bombers was way worth it to the district. And so that's their policy now. If you're gonna have guest speakers, let them know ahead of time and they will modify your account. It takes all of 10 seconds for them. It's not too bad. Then let's say you've got your breakout rooms all pre-assigned and you want to mix it up today, right? You want to just scramble them. You don't want them to be in their normal rooms. You can recreate them and you can scramble all the rooms and send them off to different rooms. And then you go, wait, but I need them to go back to their original rooms. I need them to go back. You can do that. When you have pre-assigned rooms set up, when you click on the recreate button, you'll have this option that says recover to pre-assigned rooms. and all the kids will go back to their originally assigned rooms when you click that button, and then you can hit open all rooms again and allow them to go in there. So that's pre-assigning breakout rooms and all of that. And oh, the other question that we had about jumping from room to room. So I don't have a screenshot of that. I should have, sorry. But basically this window here on the left, instead of it being rename and delete room, it ends up being join. And basically you're able to click join for any of the rooms and you will jump between rooms, whichever room that you click on. So that's how you can move between different breakout rooms. All right, so there's that. I will definitely go back to CSVs later because I do have them on my computer here. I just don't have it as a screenshot. So I'll definitely pull that up later for you guys though. All right, so that's breakout rooms. They're definitely useful as long as you kind of set the guidelines, you trust your kids a little bit, and you know, you have good uses for them. The other thing that my colleagues have been doing this with, so I have a colleague that teaches AP seminar and AP research on campus, and what she's done is, because their class is very individual, like the kids are working on their own research projects, right? And so it's not as much collaboration as maybe some other classes. So she just did a check-in with them. She put every kid in their own breakout room to work for the period. And then she spent the 90-minute period just going from room to room and just saying, how are you doing? Tell me about how it's going, you know? And it allowed the teacher to establish a relationship with the kid that they maybe otherwise would never have done because of just the nature of Zoom and like not wanting to speak in front of others, right? But just in a one-on-one setting, the breakout rooms were great for that she was able to go and make a connection with each kid and definitely, you know, connect with them and understand like, okay, well, where are you struggling? Where do you need help? And, you know, she's taking notes so she knows, you know, which kids she needs to come back to. And I think that, you know, it can definitely have great uses there. And if they can't leave the breakout room, then they're just stuck there. So they're just working on their own until you show up. And I think that was a great use of the breakout rooms. And so the other thing, if you create breakout rooms and you say manually, you actually don't necessarily have to assign everybody to a breakout room. So an example is we had a biology teacher who needed to have a breakout room for her EL kids and the EL coordinator to go into during class. And so she would let the EL coordinator into the Zoom meeting. Then she would create breakout rooms, but just one. She would assign all the EL kids and the coordinator to the room and then open it. They would go in, all the rest of her kids stay in the main meeting, and then she just continues on teaching the way that she had been. So there are definitely good uses for that. And, you know, if you get creative with it, there's definitely a lot of interesting things that you could do with breakout rooms. So just be a little cautious with that. Good question. Can you have multiple preset breakout rooms? The short answer is yes, but you can't save them on Zoom. Essentially, you would have to clear the breakout rooms that you have on Zoom and have whatever multiple preset breakout rooms you have saved as different CSV files on your computer, if that makes sense, right? So if you have like 3 sets of breakout rooms for one class, you would need 3 files and you would basically need to import the file that you wanted to use for that day. That's unfortunately the best way to do it right now. So yeah, okay, cool. Let's talk a little about screen sharing. Screen sharing is definitely a must on Zoom. It's definitely super important. You know, that's what we're doing right now. You're seeing my screen being shared with you. You know, for PowerPoint presentations, whiteboard exercises, general instruction, show a video, right? You could also show cool pictures of your dog. That's my dog. And so, you know, things like that. And so screen sharing can definitely be very, very helpful, but you also have to be careful about screen sharing if you set the wrong settings. So at the bottom of the screen, there's a green share screen button, right? You guys may or may not have that right now. I think since I'm sharing, you may not, but even if you click it right now, it's gonna say only the host can share, and you can't do it right now. That's because my settings are set properly. So if you click on that green arrow and then you open options, this is the window that appears. And I think it's really, really important that only one participant shares at a time and you only let the host share. opening up sharing to all participants is a nightmare. And you're just opening it up to all sorts of bad things. And so I would strongly recommend that you keep it on only host. The only time that I've let all participants share is when I'm working with a kid one-on-one and they're having some kind of technical issue, or they have something on their screen that they need to show me, like a practice problem that they found or something like that. Then I'll change it to that so that they can show me what they're talking about. But for the most part, this is only host, and that's how it is all the time, right? One thing I do recommend to you guys, if you are using Zoom, or even if you're using some other one, a lot of people are using Google Meet, and I think the main edge that Zoom has over Google Meet is the controls that Zoom has compared to Google Meet. That you can't keep kids muted in Google Meet. You can't prevent them from sharing screens in Google Meet. There are all sorts of these control limitations that in a classroom environment are pretty detrimental to your teaching. And so what I do recommend is that you have multiple monitors. This is the setup that I'm sitting in front of right now, just so you understand. I'm overboard here with the 3 monitors and all that. Like that's way too much. But I do recommend you have at least 2. Have your main screen, whichever screen, you know, whether it's your laptop or you have a desktop monitor, have a second screen. And the reason I would say that is because, for example, right now, I'm doing this PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is open over here to my left on that screen. I can see it, full screen. You guys here as my participants are open here on my middle screen where my camera is. So when I look at you guys, I look like I'm addressing you, right? And then I have another screen over here to my right. That's my presenter view for PowerPoint, so I know what's coming next, right? But I think that that's important in terms of you being able to see the kids, to get feedback in terms of how much they're understanding it. And also in terms of having the participant and chat windows open simultaneously while you're teaching. That this definitely allows you to do that. So if you don't have a second screen, I do really recommend it. You'll never go back, I'll tell you that. You'll never go back after that. Anyway, after you hit the share screen button, you're gonna get this to come up, right? These are all of the different things that you can share with your students. And I had a lot of stuff open when I shared this screen earlier today. And so you can see that I could share any of my 3 desktops, right? I could share a whiteboard, which is exactly what it sounds like. I could share what's on my phone or iPad, or I could share any particular app that was open, including my fantasy football lineup. And so, you can click on a lot of different things and you can do all of that. But what I do want to bring to your attention here is, let's say you want to show a video, right? If you want to show a video that's going to stream from YouTube or Netflix or wherever you're going to get this video from, this is super important. Down here in the left corner, right, there's a checkbox that says share computer sound. You have to check that box in order for the kids to be able to hear the video. If you don't check it, they're just going to see someone talking and not be able to hear a thing, right? So it's really important that when you're going to show a video of any kind or do something that requires them to hear sounds, that you check that box so that they can follow along with you, right? So one thing that I really like to do with my AP Chem class is I like to teach as close to what it would be in the real classroom as possible. And in the real classroom, I would use my whiteboard. I love my whiteboard. I love handwriting everything. I actually hate PowerPoints, which is ironic since that's exactly what I'm giving to you guys right now. But I don't like PowerPoints at all. And I actually use my iPad and a whiteboard app to be able to teach my kids. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like now, because that has been the most useful thing for my kids in terms of explaining difficult concepts to them. You know, if this was a class that, if AP Chem was a class that didn't require a ton of mathematical symbols and subscripts and, formulas and all of that, I might just do PowerPoint. I might do that, or a Pear Deck even. Some of you might be familiar with Pear Deck. But being a class where it's just, endless amounts of subscripts and all of that on an iPad. So this is the iPad app. It's very blandly called Whiteboard. I'll put a link for it in the PowerPoint and send it out to you guys. But this is what I found to be the best whiteboard app for me so far. I also have an Apple Pencil to go along with it. And I have an iPad Pro here. And so the iPad allows me to do that and everything. But yes, and even the meeting has the function for whiteboard. You can do that in the meeting as well. But like the iPad better, just personally. And so anyway, you know, I can teach all the kids. I can say, you know, hey guys, here's our chemical equation today. And sorry, excuse my horrendous handwriting. Kids complain about it all the time, and I'm like, well, sorry. So anyway, it allows me to do all of these different things, change the colors. You can change it to as many different colors as you want and all of that. But I really like it because I can put pictures in here too. So it allows me to put in any kind of picture that I want. And so, for example, if I want to teach them today about the periodic table, right, we can do that. And I can mark up the periodic table as much as I want and say, man, that's my favorite element, right? And all of that, but it's pretty seamless. And I also like that afterwards, I can export all of my whiteboard slides as a PDF, and then I upload those online with the recording of the lecture. And so this has been a super easy whiteboard app to use. And basically, that's how you add a new slide, and that's how you save down there. But this has been a pretty nice app, and there are lots of them out there. Show Me is another common one that's used. I prefer this one over Show Me. I was just looking for something basic. Like, give me something where I can use multiple colors and I can add images in once in a while, and that's all I want. And so this has been pretty nice for me. And so if you add a new slide, you know, then you can start writing and all that. So I definitely like this particular one, and the kids are able to follow along. I can show you what some of my lectures have looked like. We can talk about what we did today. So today we talked about the ideal gas law, and we talked about how gases behave ideally when they're at high temperature and low pressure. And so the kids basically are seeing what you're seeing on the screen, and they follow along. And then all of this got posted later today to Google Classroom, and they can go back and reference it. Or if I had a student fall asleep in the middle of class today, so now he can go back and he can catch up on all the things that he slept through, and it's wonderful. So I definitely do recommend that if that's something that interests you. But I do like this app a lot. So anyway, I'm going to stop sharing that. Let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Cool. All right. So that's the link for the app. And this whole thing, I think, will be posted somewhere. I don't know exactly where. I'm sure Jess will tell us later today.
Yes, I'll be sharing that at the end.
Perfect. Excellent. So if you're interested in finding that specific app, that's the link for it, and you can find that there. But yeah, it's literally called Whiteboard, easy and smart. It's exactly what it is. So there's that. I do want to talk about some Zoom web settings, because there are some settings that you need to set online in order to really make this as easy as possible for you. And so what I've done is I've actually put together a document of all of the most important Zoom settings and what my recommendations are in terms of it being on or off, or if it's your choice, then you know, what the choices mean. So I've put that up. Again, that'll be on the PowerPoint when it gets sent out later today, right? So definitely take a look at that. But here's some settings that I felt that I should probably go over with you. You want join before host to be off. If you have join before host on, that means that the kids will be able to get into the meeting before you even get onto the meeting yourself. And you don't want that. You want to be able to get into the meeting, set everything up the way that you want it set up, and then go from there, right? But you definitely don't want the kids getting in before you do. The mute participants upon entry, it's exactly what it sounds like. So basically, if you have it on, everyone comes into the meeting muted, and that's great, because otherwise you'll get some kids coming in screaming, and it'll be horrible and disruptive, and just bring them in muted. And if they really have something to say, then you can unmute them, or they can unmute themselves. Private chat, we discussed earlier, off. Just strong recommendation, just have it off. There's nothing that they should be sending privately to one another during class. The sound notification when someone joins or leaves, this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of monitoring the weight room, right? If you have this option turned on, then that means that you'll hear a sound every time someone joins or leaves the meeting. And that will help you monitor the weight room, especially mid-class. File transfer off. You don't need them sending images or GIFs or anything else to each other during class. It's just not necessary. It'll just create more problems than it's worth. Co-host, this is your choice. Basically, if you're going to have somebody help you with your meeting, or if you're going to have somebody help monitor your class with you, co-host might be a great thing for you to have enabled. For example, when I had a staff meeting this morning, right? My staff meeting, there's over 100 of us in the staff meeting, all contributing questions and coming into the meeting late and all sorts of other things. And so what my principal does is he's the host, and then he makes all of the assistant principals co-hosts. So they can admit people, they can mute mics when people are being ridiculous, and they can answer questions in the chat. They can set settings for him, things like that. So basically, if you want someone to be able to help you manage your meeting, then co-host would be a great option for you to do that. Screen sharing, definitely want that on. Who can share though? Host only. Very important that you set that setting properly, right? Don't allow the students to share their own screens. It'll become a nightmare real quick. This one I choose to have on, allow remove participants to rejoin. If you have somebody that's just completely out of control and you just kind of like, you're out of here, you're gone, right? If you kick them out and this option is off, they aren't able to rejoin for the rest of the day for that meeting, right? Until you completely restart the meeting. If you have it on, they can rejoin, but again, if you have the waiting room on, they just get put back in the waiting room, right? So it's not like they can come in and just continue to disrupt your class every time you kick them out. So it is off by default. Oops, it's off by default. So make sure that you do choose the right option there for yourself. Okay, where did my mouse go? It just disappeared. Okay. Virtual background. This is your choice, but keep in mind, and this is something that confused a lot of teachers. The virtual background setting is not a setting for your participants. It is a setting for yourself, right? So if you have virtual background off, it means that you won't be able to use a virtual background. It does not mean that your participants won't be able to use a virtual background, right? We discovered this because my fiance was having problems with her 5th graders with this particular problem. And the reality is we can't control it. That is actually a limitation of Zoom. You cannot prevent them from changing a virtual background. And so we've resorted to turning cameras off, but that's about the best we can do in terms of limiting it. So unfortunately, that's how it goes. I have just a couple more things, and then I can also answer any questions at the end. Recording, there are 2 different types of it. You can do local recording, which is what this meeting is doing right now. And basically that is recording to a file on the host computer, right? So if you choose to do a local recording, it ends up being a file on your computer later on. I will tell you that Chromebooks can't do this. Chromebooks cannot do local recording. So if you're using a Chromebook to host a meeting, that's not going to work, just to let you know. It is quicker to obtain the recording after the meeting has ended. It usually takes somewhere, it depends on how long your meeting is, but mine, if they're about an hour, they probably take about 5-10 minutes to become available after the meeting is over. The other kind of recording is a cloud recording. If you record with the cloud, you're recording to Zoom server instead of to your local computer, right? When you do that, you have more options and flexibility over what's recorded and how, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But what you do need to know is that it's way slower to obtain the recording after the meeting's over. So if you need this recording like right away, the second that the meeting's over, you should do a local recording. If you have time to kill and you don't need the recording right away, you can do a cloud recording. Just for reference, I have had an 1.5-hour Zoom recording be done in as quick as 20 minutes and as long as 3 hours, right? So it really depends on where Zoom server is at and how many other videos also need to be produced. So just be aware that it could be a while. When you're recording, if you choose local recording, these are the options that you have available to you. Basically, do you want to record or do you not? And basically anything you see on your screen is being recorded. When you do cloud recording, these are the options that are available to you. There are significantly more when you do cloud recording than when you do local recording. So just be aware. I do very much like the cloud recording because when you do that, you see how it says record active speaker, gallery view, and shared screen separately. For those of you that have districts with privacy concerns, right? If you choose that option and choose active speaker only, Essentially what will happen is while you're sharing your screen and doing your PowerPoint or doing your whiteboard, you're the one talking is the assumption, right? Your kids aren't talking during that. So basically what will happen is you get recorded and your shared screen gets recorded, and that's what ends up being in the video file when you publish it. So when you upload it, you won't see any kids' faces in it or names or anything like that because it's just the person that's talking. So if you have privacy concerns and things like that, that's a great way to kind of get around it, is that, you know, as long as the kids aren't talking during your presentation, then they won't be on the screen ever. So that's been a great way to kind of work with districts that have had that kind of concern. Okay. And let's see, my mouse is just gone. It's just disappeared now. So reports, this is my last bit. There are 3 different types of reports. They are all accessible on Zoom's website under reports, which is on the left-hand side once you log into Zoom. The first kind of report is usage. This is a report that shows you who was in the meeting, how long they were there, under what email, what name they were under, if they connected, disconnected, if they renamed. All of that information is there. So if you're looking to take attendance, that's the one that you want to use, your usage report, right? If you want registration reports though, for example, all of you had to register to come to this meeting today, right? All of that information is stored in the registration report. So you can look at all of the answers. So I definitely had a question before we started about where you can see all of that information. That's where you'll find it, in the registration report. So if you have any questions for users when they're registering, you'll see all of the answers in the registration report. The last one is a poll report, right? I told you that you could have polls that were anonymous or not. If the poll was not anonymous, you can actually check the results of each poll and find out who voted for what during your poll in any particular meeting. So those are the 3 kinds of reports. And that is all I've got for you guys today. So if you ever have any questions, I get tons of tech questions year round, all the time. Former students, former teachers, former colleagues, like I'm more than happy to entertain and answer those questions to the best of my ability. So that's my email address. If you want to write that down and have that available. And if you come up with questions later, then I'm of course happy to try and answer those and help you guys out. But at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions or anything else. But yeah, that's all I've got for you guys. I'm also going to try and get my mouse back real quick. So I'm going to see, let's see. And there we go.
Thank you, Corey.
You're welcome.
Hey, I have a question for you. You know how I was telling you about, so I have sometimes the para that I put in a breakout room after my synchronous time. And then I want to make a breakout room individually for the kids if I want to talk one-on-one with them. I can't do that, huh? Because once I've already created one, I can't go back, like leave them alone and then do breakouts. How does that work?
You actually can do it. Basically, you would create manual breakout rooms, and you would have to create enough rooms for all of the different kids to have their own breakout room and your coordinator at the same time. Then you would manually put your coordinator and whoever is supposed to be in that room there and open the room, and then everyone else stays in the main session until you assign them to breakout rooms separately. But it's definitely possible for you to do that.
Okay, because you hate to disrupt people, so I don't want to experiment on them because then it's like a mess. But okay, I was curious about that.
Yeah, definitely possible. You are most welcome. Thank you. I hope that I have taught you something.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for that. So much great information. I feel like I learned so much. But we do want to take a couple of minutes, just like 2 minutes, for everyone that's joining us to take a quick survey. I just sent the link over on the chat. This will give us some feedback about tonight's webinar, as well as give you an opportunity to let us know what kind of webinars you want to see in the future. So you can find that link on the chat. As you're completing that survey, I also want to encourage everyone to check out our website. We will be adding more webinars in the coming days. So this webinar is being recorded, and all of our past webinars have also been recorded. You can find those. I'm going to put the link on the chat. You can find those on that website. As Mr. Lee said, I will be following up probably tomorrow with a summary of today, with the website to find future webinars, as well as where to find the recording of this and the presentation from tonight. But we'll stick around if you have any questions. If not, well, thank you everyone for joining and have a good night.